be the only free speech party, so I think that deserves a round of applause. I'm not here to just praise you, I'm also here to disagree with something quite important here. That I go with the proposition that free speech shouldn't apply to everything in terms of running a political state. I'm one of those people that believe, for instance, that our borders as a nation state should be a separate entity on itself, beyond government and civilian, free speech, democratic votes. I believe that a good society, a good nation state, should have a really strict border policy that should be a separate entity, so that, say like if I'm a Marxist party and I infiltrate my way into the government in a democratic vote, and I want to go with the leading proposition that, there's no definition of what applies to be a British citizen. So therefore, any person from a third world country can just move here, bring their entire family in here, and just basically just dissolve the whole point for a state. If I use the democratic platform through my political advantage, and I believe that there are some government policies that should be basically avoided from democratic opinionship.
Well, I mean, I agree that there are definitely policies that a government could implement that should be avoided in democracies. But what's this got to do with free speech exactly?
Well, I'm just the thing that I want to point here is that I know that you don't credit yourself as a free speech, extremist, and there are some points that you would disagree. But how you campaign on your MEP, how you campaign yourself in your MEP campaign is that you want to use free speech as your main advertisement post, and I just want to know, is that entirely true or?
I didn't think it'd ever be necessary to do so. I mean, I would have thought being pro-Brexit was enough, frankly. And I'm kind of annoyed that the Brexiteers seem to be kind of letting the Remainers drive the dialogue still.
Yeah.
There's a distinct lack of conviction amongst Brexiteers. And it's not that they don't personally believe it, but it's they're not prepared to get onto the streets and fight for it. But I'm curious about what you were saying about free speech and borders, because it kind of sounded like you wanted to censor certain ideas from crossing borders. And I may have interpreted that wrong.
No, what I mean is like, civilians here in the UK, in my ideal state, where the borders would be a separate entity in the UK, none of you as British citizens can have an opinion in changing well, you can have an opinion like in terms of conversation. We won't arrest you for having an opinion about borders, but if you wanted to go that further and literally changing stuff from the political end, there'd be no way you could do it because it would be a separate entity that wouldn't be a democratic government.
Do you mean like a constitutional restriction on abolishing borders or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. But in in Game of Thrones, like in that whole fantasy unit, there's a whole class of men that dedicate their entire lives to protecting the border. I'm not saying we should go in terms of like a fantasy land where you have like male recruits, dedicating their entire lives, but like the whole border thing would be its own organisation, and therefore, would have its own, proper defence within government, and wouldn't be, politically changed.
Honestly, I don't think we need to do. I mean, that is actually quite an extreme position.
Okay.
I don't think we need to go nearly that far. I think really the problem is government policy on this. From the Labour Party saying, well, we're going to have 300,000 people in a year, and then the Conservative Party conserving their open border policy.
Yeah.
I think that we can just go back and address the Labour policy and say, right, how about we just restrict it to about 30,000?
But the thing is that the Labour Party and, well, the corporate, globalists and civil servants that, in my opinion, in my view, I think run the country, their main strategy of overriding the whole border argument is that through time, through decades, they're going to import more and more people from third world countries that will vote for, left-wing policies such as open borders, and therefore, through time and through demographic change, I honestly think that if this Marxist, infiltration on the border argument, wins in the end, we could be looking at a future Western nation that there is no sense of a civilized nation, because a civilized nation needs strict borders. It really does.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I honestly think that.
Let's give up to you actually.
It's just like nowadays we're living in really extreme times where, like, through technological advancements, anybody can have an opinion that can have an influence in the political sphere. Like in the past, like in your day when you were my age, different. Well, in the 80s. I'm not saying you're not. So like prior before the internet was taking shape, a pleb like me couldn't have, influence on what I said. But nowadays, as technology is getting stronger and everybody's being recorded what they say, and like as I'm saying right now, as this is being broadcast right now, my speech does have an impact, and it does have consequence. And it only takes one stupid fool to say, oh, I have an idea, everything should be free. What's the point of having rules? What's the point of having a civilized thing? I just see that as barriers.
Man, I tell you what, these problems happened long before the internet. I mean, this is exactly the problem that we have with Karl Marx back in 1848 or whenever it was he put that manifesto. So I understand that you're afraid that, and understandably so, there is a distinct push towards having, frankly, Western countries dismantled in order to create a super state.
I see it.
And I completely agree with you. But the thing is, what I'm concerned about is that what you're suggesting would certainly lead to what sounds like tyranny to me. Because as soon as we start giving the state to license our opinions, then we find ourselves in the question of who controls the state. And the problem with who controls the state is, frankly, they're quite left-wing. Extremely left-wing in many cases. And it really is a concern that effectively you're giving them the power to censor us.
Okay, what you just said was correct, but I didn't say that we would hand the borders system towards the government. It would be its own kind of like separate entity from the government, but it would work apart with the state. Now, I know that you can interpret the state as, owned and governed by the government. But the thing is, like, if we were sort of like, what we would have to go is we'd have to follow a different system, sort of like a republic, in that sense, where, a republic is basically formed of
separation of powers.
Separation of powers, And we don't have to name it as a republic. We can name it our own thing and then influence that. But it's just that, like, what I'm seeing right now in this time period is that I'm seeing a lot of, opportunists, and I mean a lot of people that would rather, wouldn't care if all of you died, and would be, as long as they've got their own retreats and their own families are safe, why should they care? And that's what I'm seeing, a lot of people that are infiltrating, governments and political parties for their own benefit. And the problem is that, rats and infiltrators can only survive if the base is neutral and democratic, in my view. That is a consequence of democracy, unfortunately. That's not to say we should just basically, destroy democracy and say, well, that's the only way of getting rid of these, infiltrators and these opportunists in. It's just that there are some things that need protection so that these infiltrators cannot meddle with. That's my argument.
I don't think we should be calling our fellow citizens rats and infiltrators, just because that's the way they will describe us in various ways. They call us Nazis. And I think that's the kind of the problem with the kind of dialogue we have. We're treating the people who live in this country with us as the enemy. And that's the path to civil war, in my opinion. But I'm not unsympathetic to the desire to have strong borders. The problem is we're not able to have this dialogue, because I think the regular person would actually, I think you can make a very persuasive argument for strong, not even like no immigration or anything like that, but just a sensible immigration policy. I think you make a very strong argument for it that the public will widely agree with, which is why they're doing everything they can to dismantle this conversation.
Yeah, you're correct on that hypothesis. Describe that. It's just that my argument is that if we were to treat like like a nation state and a government like a garden, right? There are like if you imagine having your own garden, you would want some plants in your garden to be protected from weeds, right? Because in any environment, there are going to be people with bad intentions or their own opportunistic intentions, no matter where you live in the world. That's just human nature. So, in order to basically, prevent them having power, you've got to create certain systems that will kind of fork them out. And basically, that's what I'm arguing. I'm just saying that if we were to basically separate the borders as a separate entity from the government, and I know I'm being myself here, but if we were to give it a special guard, so that just no politician can have their own opinion saying either borders need to be completely stronger, so we will separate the board of people coming in based on their race, or just saying the argument that Britain isn't a state. Britain is for everyone. It's for every third world migrant to come here and basically, just ruin everything. That's basically what I want to say.
Really what it sounds like is you're complaining about government immigration policy. I mean, we live in Ireland, so they come here, it must be within knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's really the government's policy that is the problem.
Yeah, but can I just say one thing? Here in this country, thanks to the Tony Blair Act, Tony Blair was, this guy I think is pretty much our most, let's just say, insidious Prime Minister that Britain has ever had. But what that guy did, very funnily enough, was that he made a policy. I think he did somewhere basically in the early 2000s where he was the first Prime Minister to sort of extend the amount of countries that could, third world countries that can come in here, so sort of opening up to countries within the North African region and sort of mid-Asia, sort of Pakistan and Afghanistan areas. So basically, if I'm a Pakistani farmer, for instance, all I need to do is say, if I just hate Pakistan because I see it as a third world shithole, and I'm thinking of it.
You say hate speech not in this country, you might not yourself.
India #1.
So if I'm this Pakistani farmer and I want to basically have a better life in a Western country, all I need to do, and this is what left-wing organisations tell to migrants, they teach them these tactics as I speak. All I need to do is just basically make friends with a Western charity, and they can go into further context of setting up an asylum for me and my entire family to just move in. So I would have to first move in, get a job, and then over time I would have enough benefits, money and funds to basically send not just my wife but my grandparents and all of my 15 children into the UK. And therefore, if you imagine that through a big time scale, through over time, it's no wonder that you end up in some parts of in the UK, and especially in urban areas, where these cities are completely demographically replaced by a certain ethnic group that are very homogenous and are very, quite wary of.
But again, that's a failure. That's a failure of our immigration policy, rather than not being able to protect the borders.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's just we can just say no, because I mean, this is the thing. I get a lot of people saying things, and I don't want to call you an extremist or a radical. But what you're saying is fairly extreme. But I get a lot of people saying this kind of thing to me, and I'm just like, well, ultimately the problem is just our own permissiveness. We just need to say no at certain points rather than yes all the time.
Okay. So my last point here would be, why not, instead of allowing these Labour Marxists and Trotskyists to, once they get into power, it's likely that Corbyn will get a seat in power in the year 2022. Yeah, well, there is a likely chance he will, whether you like it or not. But he will go with the argument, and he will get, and from the Tory corporatists and globalists, he won't get any forms of, opposition on, if he was to make a policy that, Britain should be a nation for all people globally. Imagine he does that in the periods of power. There'd be no, formidable opposition to stop him from doing that, even by parliamentary vote. So instead of giving, the risk of borders onto the parliament hands and people who just want to see this country burn, why don't we set up, a guard fence as a separate entity so they don't get their dirty hands over it? That's my argument.
Because the problem is, it's not physically stopping them from coming to the country. It's the problem, like I said, we're in Ireland. physically they can't
Yeah,
get
but it doesn't matter. They use cargo planes. They use planes to fly over.
Illegal immigration isn't really the problem here. It's legal immigration. It's the problem we're permitting.
Yeah.
What we need is to elect governments that are just going to be restrictive on immigration, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks.